Hey everybody, Scott Hudspeth here with Agent Mastermind. So excited to have you here. I have the privilege of being on the call with these two gentlemen, and I think Chris is on the call with us. We're trying to get John on, having a little technical difficulty, but they wrote the book Easy. Dude, I love the name of this book, John. So Chris, I'm so super excited to have you guys on today. Easy Money and the American Real Estate Ponzi Scheme. So I appreciate you sending me the book. A great read, so I'd highly recommend it for anybody that hasn't read it yet. So Easy Money, and you're going to share with us a great class today, Chris. Super excited to have you here. I'm going to work at trying to get your partner on here. I'm going to turn off my webcam. And Chris, thanks so much for joining us. I know you guys are busy. I know you're traveling the country talking about your book and talking about your expertise in what you guys do. So what do you got for us today, man?
Great. Hi, Scott. How you doing?
Excellent.
It's great to be here. It's great to speak with you again. Just wanted to thank you for the interview that you allowed us to do for our book, and we're grateful for it. And we gained a lot of insight from that. We enjoyed talking to real top experts in the field, and I wanted to thank you again for that. And the book's doing pretty well. We've topped our category a couple of times, two categories a couple of times in Amazon, so we're excited about that. And today we're going to talk, we'll refer to the book, but what we're going to talk about is the actual business of real estate and how to differentiate your brand. A lot of agents are taught how to list and sell, but they aren't taught much about the actual business of real estate. So we can't do everything, but we're going to touch upon it today.
Sounds great.
Okay. So, got to advance my slide here. There we go.
Yeah, there you go.
Thank you. I hit the wrong button. So our book took us really 3 years to write, a lot of research, and a lot of material that's in here relates to the real estate industry, what happened during the last great housing recession, what's still present that didn't get fixed, and the dangers to look out for going forward. But we have some really great information that we'll talk to you today about the real estate cycle and about actually buying a house, and what is that really a good financial investment for everyone. My bio is that I've been around real estate for a very long time, and I was the president-elect of the Maine Association of Realtors in 1991. I was a land developer, real estate investor, owned several real estate franchises. At one time, I was even a part-time lobbyist for the Maine Association of Realtors, and I'm an author, guest speaker, and some people call me a real estate guru. And my current focus is consulting, training investors, and selling investment programs and coaching.
Beautiful.
My co-author, and he's a great guy, John Augustinelli, has a great experience in the banking industry. He worked for the FDIC for 9 years. He also has a history of being a home builder and a rehabber. He's a real estate broker and a franchise owner. And he and I together sold hundreds of bank-owned properties, and he's sold some on his own, both before and after. He's a real estate investor for over 20 years. He's an author, coach, speaker, housing policy commentator, and he's a very good friend. And I couldn't have done this book without him, there's no question. So his current focus is joint ventures, coaching and mentoring, private funding, and real estate brokerage. So one of the problems with real estate agents I found over the years is they get all excited, they're taught how to get a listing, and they don't understand the nature of the business behind it. One of the first things that I think every real estate agent should do before or right after they hire on with a broker is they should start to develop a business plan.
Right.
You need to know who are you going to target, who you are going to target in the business. You need to know what you need to do, where you're going to do it, how you're going to do it, when to do it, why to do it, and how much of it that you need to do to get where you want to go. So a pretty simple formula, though not the easiest to obtain always, is you need to know what your average commission rate is. If you've been in the business for a while and you know what that is, that's great. If you haven't been in business yet, you can get what the average commission is for your company's average listings that get sold and the average buyers that they're sold to. So if you want to work both ends of the spectrum, if you want to work with listings and you want to work with buyers, what you need to know to determine your income, since it's a commission-only business, is you need to know what's the sales rate of listings that I've sold or my office averages, if that's the only target that you have because you aren't in business. You also need what their rate is of sale working with buyers. So let's say they sell 60% of their buyers and 80% of their listings. If you add those two factors together, multiply the sales rate times your number of listings that you have, and you add the number of buyers you're working with times that sales rate, you'll come out with an estimated income. Okay?
You know what's funny, Chris, about that is I'm putting together, and this it's kind of funny that you make that. So if you know how much you make, you know how much you make per closing, and then how much you actually want to make. It's kind of an easy number, right? Whatever. So
that's correct.
I'm actually putting a presentation together. It's funny you bring that up. I'm putting a presentation together, how to turn 23 hours into $250,000 in income per year.
Oh, that's great. That's really great.
Yeah.
You know how many people don't do that in the business?
I know.
It's amazing.
I know.
It's amazing.
I know.
I'm glad you're training your people that way. You also need a marketing plan. So here we're just going to touch on briefly about what the gross marketing plan is for you. But frankly, every property really deserves a marketing plan. If you're charging $10, $15, $20, or $30,000 for a commission, doesn't that property deserve a marketing plan? So not just for the benefit of the seller, but to make sure that your time is accounted for and your cost is accounted for, so you know what your profit margin is going to be. And as we'll talk about, who are you going to market to? Where are your buyers or sellers going to come from? Who are you target marketing? If you're not target marketing, if you're just doing a blast, like you can buy some of this, you used to be able to buy banner ads for about 1/2 cent a hit. You could buy 1 million banner ads for, I don't know what the cost was. And they just shotgun approach everything. And that's not usually very effective. Google AdWords, for example, would be much more effective. And we don't have time to get in all the details about how to target market today, but that's what you need to do. So you need to make that determination for yourself, so you know where your buyers and sellers are come from. You need to know, how much is this going to cost me, when you'll get results. So you need to also know what your average market time is in any given market. And as we'll talk about a little bit later, that's directly related to the real estate cycle. And when you put all those numbers together, you'll have a better map about where you want to go. And without a marketing plan also, you're going to spend money and you won't know where you're spending it and for what reason. You need to measure your results. If you can, here's what my son, who is in digital marketing, tells me. If you don't know where your money's going, if somebody's selling you something that they can't prove some results for you, don't buy it.
There you go.
Don't buy it.
Don't
buy it. You also need a strategic plan. So it's great to have a great business plan. A lot of them just sit on the shelf, and it takes you a couple of weeks maybe to design one. You create a marketing plan based on some numbers that you've got and some research, but you have no way to implement it. So after you've developed your business plan, or as part of developing your business plan, you need to develop a strategic plan. So most people find it easier to determine, where am I going to be 5 years from now? They can get their head around that. Like, oh yeah, well, I want to make $200,000 a year. I want to have a Mercedes, and I want to have a new house with a swimming pool. And so they can see that. And now what you have to do is you have to back up and say, okay, in order to get there, what is it that I have to do today? So you work your business plan backwards. That's what I do, is I work it backwards using the numbers. And that's why the numbers are so important in the beginning. What's your sales rate? What's your average commission? What is your anticipated amount of prospects and leads? What does it take me to get a lead? How many contacts do I have to get one lead? How many leads does it take to convert into one listing or one buyer? And how many listings or how many buyers does it take to get one closing? Because that's where the money is. Once you determine all of those numbers, you can determine what it is that you need to do today, this week, this month, this quarter, this year, and 5 years from now to get to the number that you need. And you have to adjust. What you do is you adjust if you can't get there. So if you find that you have to do 60 transactions a year to make $200,000, and you find out that your sales rate and your average commission doesn't get you there, you need to do 75, you need to adjust your plan to get to 75, or God forbid, you need to adjust your income downwards.
Hey,
So,
great news, Chris. We were able to get John on, so John is now with us. So he had yeah. I want to relate this to another way of looking at it, and like your way is, I love what you're talking about here, because this is exactly what I'm going to be presenting. But think about this: if I knocked on 10 doors, I would get one listing, or 20 doors, or 30 doors. You could literally dictate your income. You could literally set it to however much you want to make. You with me?
Correct.
Correct. So I think we wake up and we go, all right, I'm going to buy this lead source, and I've seen people with 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 leads, but they don't know what to do with them because it's so hard to track that many coming in. So if you can't track it, why spend the money in the first place, right?
That's right.
Or another, and maybe you're going to cover this. So what if you hire somebody to do nothing but track the leads for you, right? So there's always ways around that. So tracking is number one for sure in my book.
That's right. And these plans are flexible. So you design them, you implement them according to the strategies, some of the things that we're talking about. And then what you do is if you find something doesn't work or something has changed, you regroup and you start all over again.
Exactly.
You don't have to redo everything again, but you restart where you need to restart, and you replace what you need to replace to get where you want to go.
Exactly.
So John's going to talk with you about getting back to basics. So I'll turn it over to John.
Johnny.
Okay. Can you guys hear me?
Hey, Johnny, I got one for you. Johnny, I got one for you. Here's Johnny.
Oh, Scotty, you're the man. I'm a little late to the party, but I made it.
Good, man. Welcome to the call.
So thank you very much, Scotty, for having us on. Sorry for whatever glitch that was. I don't know what the heck happened, but we figured we'd talk also about getting back to some basics. So we all know that people do business with people that they know, like, and trust. Scotty, you've talked about that on many prior episodes. So there's nothing new there, but we just want to talk about a couple things about that. I think that realtors try to automate as much as possible, and that's great, and that can be efficient for your business. But real estate is a people business and always will be. So I think what happens is sometimes we forget that. I mean, that's the core principle of our business. And referrals are a first step to building a relationship. And now the industry is moving towards warm referrals, which gives you a jump start in turning a prospect into a client. But that process is all about building and maintaining those relationships. So the technologies are great. We're not saying don't use the technologies. And the technologies that I'm talking about are lead generation systems, and then the social media, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, blogging, websites. It's great and can be used as a tool to build your business, but I think we can forget about just picking up the phone and reaching out to our clients, our friends, our database, scheduling a time to grab coffee, and just sending out handwritten cards. So I think that we need to return to some of these old school techniques. So another point I want to make here is being a volunteer. Whether you're coaching one of the town's sports teams, being involved at the town level, these increases the number of way people get to know you, and it's a way to kind of grow your sphere of influence. So it's important to connect with people anywhere and everywhere. So it's really a combo of this old school and the use of technology that's really what makes you succeed in today's marketplace. So that includes connecting with professionals too. So at the end of the presentation, I think we have, Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, I think there's a slide that has our contact information. So by all means, connect with us too. And if you want to go on to the next slide.
Yep. It's not advancing. Here, let's see.
Just hit the left arrow or just click on the slide.
Okay. Yeah, I got it. Yep.
All right, so know, like, and trust. So let's just talk about trust for a moment. So how do you establish it? You really need to be the expert that sets you apart from your competition. And so how do we demonstrate it? How do we prove to our sphere, to potential clients, that we are the true experts? So we've all heard that content is king, and sometimes we get beaten over the head about hearing about this, but it's really great content that matters. And content for the sake of content really doesn't cut it. So when we're talking about content, we're talking about content that gives value to your clients or potential clients, and sharing your proprietary knowledge or what sets you apart from your competition. So we can use this technology and social media to gain credibility and trust. And there is no more power, it has more power when it comes from someone else. So what I'm talking about here is social proof. I really don't like the term social proof, but we're talking about reviews, video testimonials, endorsements, writing a book, and writing op-eds. So that's a way you can prove that you are the expert.
Here's a great, you guys mind if I ask a question from one of the participants here?
Please, go right ahead.
So Larry, I appreciate this question because I think this is a big one. What if you're a person who likes people, who will always do what is best for them, but who is an introvert and is not interested in relationships? Great question, man.
Wow, that's a tough one.
I know.
Yeah. Get a partner.
Yeah, right. You know what?
Yeah.
Great answer.
Yeah.
Great answer. Get the exact opposite of who you are, because now you have somebody that one doesn't kill. You know what? That was the exact answer you needed right there. Yeah.
Yeah. So Chris, that's you're spot on. Because it's really all about building these relationships and having those people know, like, and trust you, so they want to do business with you. So one more point I just want to make on this is consistency. The key is consistency. Being there when a prospect or a client needs your services is 90% of it. It's 90% of sales. You can't go radio silent for 6 months. And most sales don't happen until after at least a half a dozen touches, and more likely a dozen touches. So you have to be consistent. So there are a couple things that we see agents miss all the time. And follow-up, Scott, what do you think? Are real estate agents and mortgage folks great at follow-up? What do you think?
I think one of the challenges that everybody in sales has is follow-up. In fact, it's proven that 82% after the third call, they're gone. They don't call back. At 48% after the first call, never follow up again. 48%. It's unbelievable.
So it is unbelievable, and all you have to do is follow up. It's simply good practice, and it's shocking that clients respect the fact that people follow up, because they know the average business person is not good at it. And it's really amazing that it can set you apart by being good at following up. And so what Chris and I did when we got together to sell the bank-owned properties in 2007, we created a system. And it doesn't have to be some whiz-bang system. I'm a little bit embarrassed to admit we used an Excel spreadsheet, but you can use your calendars for that as well. So another thing that I think agents aren't really good at is their unique selling proposition, differentiating themselves from their competition. So this will be different for everyone on this call, and it's based on each person's unique skill and background set. So what works for me or what works for Scotty is not going to be what works for you. So the only person that can really figure out what works for you is to know what your unique background is and how you can shape that and spin it that differentiates you from your competition. And as a quick example of that, Chris and I created this REO Smart program for selling bank-owned properties. And what we witnessed, and I don't know if a lot of your listeners were in the business right after the bubble burst, but the brokers that listed bank-owned properties did very little. Oftentimes there was only one picture in the listing. We would see bank-owned properties, the grass would be 3 feet tall. So we tried to offer a higher level of service, and it served us well because we went from no listings to having sold hundreds of bank-owned properties between 2007 and 2011. So
I don't
Chris,
know if you guys, seen the class. I believe it was last week on the new camera. That's only around $300, $350. That takes a 360 like picture of the room, like literally ceiling to the floor. Like, I don't know why you would not be like. It's makes me sad, the pictures that some of these some people put up in their listings. It's like it's with a phone square, like you can only see it. It's so weird when you got this technology. Within 20 minutes, you can have an amazing virtual tour. It just blows my mind that you wouldn't up your game to do that. You know what I mean?
Just 100%, Scott. So what we're talking about is we saw our competition. We're not talking about anything that was really earth-shattering. We just took 20, 30 pictures and put them in the MLS listing, and then we created these CD. We put them on CDs. Now, remember, this is back in 2007. And we left them at the houses for potential buyers to take with them. And just these little details, didn't take much time, wasn't much cost, but that was the differentiator of what got us in with the largest mortgage servicing company in the country. And that led to working with all the various other banks, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, Citi, Chase. So that differentiation is, I believe, and I think Chris does too, they're extremely important. So Chris is going to talk about home ownership.
Very true. So one of the things that buyers, of course, ask, and I know that I'm preaching to the choir here, that is home ownership a good investment? So John and I have a little bit different take on that. So let me tell you the good things and the pros about home ownership is you get a capital gains exemption. There's some confusion about what that means, but the bottom line is, yes, you get a tax break. It's not often, people often view it as a penalty, but it's a gift. My suggestion is every bit of income you can convert to capital gains exemption, you want to do that. It's an inflation hedge. Generally, houses have appreciated over the years. However, the data suggests that when adjusted for inflation, Robert Schiller, wrote a book about this, or not about this, but it was in his book, and it says that adjusted for the last 124 years, inflation in real terms, inflation-adjusted terms, houses have only increased 0.3%. That was an eye-opener. Mortgage interest, but however, it's still a hedge against inflation. It's not depreciating like a new BMW that sits in your driveway and 2 weeks later it's worth 20% less. Housing is a mortgage. You have a mortgage interest deduction, so you get a benefit from your taxes based on your tax rate that you don't get in other kinds of interest that you pay. It's a forced savings plan. People that have a difficult time to save money actually are forced to save on that part of the payment that's the principal. It actually reduces the principal over time, and theoretically for most people after 30 years they will own their house free and clear if they don't spend the equity. There are the intangibles, neighborhood, being near schools, churches, whatever is important to you, maybe being near a college, maybe a lake. All those intangibles are hard to value, but they count. They count. Leverage. There are very few assets that you can buy. Try to go to the stock market and see if with 3% down you can buy 50,000 shares of GE stock. You can't. Usually you need 50% up front. So real estate, unlike most other large assets, you can buy a house with 3% or less down, depending on who you are, what your demographics are. If you're a first-time home buyer, sometimes they get additional breaks, etc. And so those are the advantages. home ownership. And John's going to talk to you about the risks.
So Scotty, this is an interesting and delicate subject to talk about. And when we interviewed you for the book, we kind of touched on this. And these things, so do I need to tread lightly here?
No, man. No, whatever you, but no, dude, I'm an open book. So what I said to you guys in that interview was 100% my thought process and my beliefs. So.
Sure. So you're not going to hear, the National Association of Realtors is not going to share a lot of this type of information here, because we've been sold for years by the real estate industrial complex, which is the National Association of Realtors, the National Association of Home Builders, the Mortgage Bankers Association, and other dues-paying groups, is that home ownership is great and they will promote it at any cost. So what we're trying to do here is just point out a few things that indicates that homeownership is really not a great financial investment, and it's important for a couple of reasons. So we're going to go through this real quickly. I think a lot of people don't take into consideration when they're purchasing a home the opportunity cost of a down payment. So someone that's purchasing a $500,000 home, putting 20% down, is putting down $100,000. Now, if they took that $100,000 and invested in the stock market and got a rate of return of, let's just say, 8%, which is like a historic average, that's $8,000 a year that they're not getting because they put it into their home to purchase their home. So other costs of home ownership, we all know their maintenance costs and their transactional costs, and it's like a mutual fund when you purchase a piece of real estate, because you have transaction costs on the front side and on the back side, like a front end load and a rear end load. And for people that own homes for a short period of time, these costs can be, it can be costly. Now, if you divide it over 25 years or 30 years of home ownership, it's not as, doesn't hurt as much as if you own a home for 3 to 5 years. Obviously, real estate tax, and why we want to mention real estate tax here is people often use the argument that you want to own a home over renting because your rental rates are likely to increase over time, and if you have a fixed rate mortgage, you're going to be fixed and locked in, so your costs don't increase, but your real estate tax increases every year. Your maintenance costs usually increase every year equal to the rate of inflation. So, and then just a couple other costs. Insurance, we all know that. And Chris mentioned earlier that according to Case-Shiller, real home prices increased between 1890 and 2014. That's the latest data that they put up there. It went up 48% during that time. So that's a real rate of return of only 0.3% per year if you believe the rate of inflation is not manipulated by the government. So let's just assume that it's not. After you subtract these other costs, on average, it makes the rate of return of owning a home likely negative. So a couple other things, prices go up, but home prices can also go down. And we talked about how purchasing it is like a stock with a front end load and a rear end load. But the point that we want to make here is that if you know we're not saying don't buy a home. We're not telling you to tell your clients not to buy homes, but we should be truthful with our clients and tell them that, yep, it's not a great financial investment, but if they can comfortably afford it, and Chris and I have for many years recommended that buyers only go up to 80% of what the banks tell them they can afford. So that's just a rule of thumb. So the point here is maybe if the buyer understood that it's not a great financial investment, instead of purchasing a $600,000 home, maybe they'll purchase a $450,000 home, a home that meets the needs of the family and leaves a little more financial cushion for times of upset that we all experience. So what do you think about that, Scotty?
And I said that, I think where this comes in for me, and if you were to use this just to be brutally transparent with your borrowers, I think you're going to cross the line of knowing, liking, and trust you that we talked about at the very first beginning of the presentation. And I think if you just break it down for them and share with them and find out about them and what their goals, dreams, and desires are, and my thought process has changed a little bit. And let me tell you why. I moved into a condo down in Florida for 6 months, and I rent the place. And I also own a home back in Michigan. So my want to own a home just because I want to put my own stuff in it. I want to have my own things. You know what I mean?
Sure.
That's important to me. So the cost of that, just having my own thing, my own place, my own stuff, and not have to worry about it, is of value to me. So I think having the conversation with your borrowers to find out what their goals, dreams, desires are, what their needs are, what their wants are. Maybe they're tired of renting and getting kicked out of a rental, or the person's selling the place, or you don't know what they've been through once they get to you. You know what I mean? But having that conversation breaks it all down and breaks down that wall they have about you just wanting a paycheck.
Absolutely, and I think that's how you can create a raving fan, knowing that client knows you have their best interest at heart. And that's truly what we're trying to achieve. And what you mentioned were you liked owning your own place. That's the intangible that Chris was talking about earlier. So there's certainly intangibles, so we're talking from a financial perspective. And as long as you can comfortably afford it, I own a home, Chris owns a home. So we're certainly not anti-home ownership, but we just thought it's something that most real estate agents never hear, and we thought we would just share a little bit of info about that.
Absolutely. No, and I've always been transparent. You guys know that. I've always been transparent with people. I would rather not put them in a worse situation than just do it to get a paycheck. You know what I mean? And I think that's why and as I teach that, and as you remove the want and the need and the what's the word I'm looking for? The want to just get a paycheck and make it about the person is so valuable. In fact, it's priceless to me because they feel it. If you're really, truly not in it for the money, you're in it for them and what is best for them, you literally, it's endless the amount of business you can do because people know that they will refer you and they'll say, listen, this guy will be straight honest with you. You might not like it, but he's going to be brutally honest.
If I might interject in that same mode for what you just said, Scott, is I used to tell my agents all the time is buyers will compromise on their wants, but not their needs. If you need a 3-bedroom home, you need a 3-bedroom home.
Yeah.
And what I found is, and I think we found in our research, is that people pay so much for their wants that sometimes it gets them in financial trouble. I mean, the debacle we went through that we wrote about was really painful sometimes for John and I to look at and say, hey, what if people bought a little smarter? So one thing that we could do, we don't have this as part of our discussion today, but just quickly, what if we looked at our houses like investors do? When John or I buy a house to flip, we look at it entirely different than as a place to live in. So it's just I think that's what really is John is suggesting there. If you look at all the costs, maybe there's another way. I don't know, it just occurred to me while we're talking.
Great. Yeah, there's a great question coming in, and I think we should address it. So Nancy, thank you for being here. I appreciate it. She's always here with us. I appreciate that, Nancy. So she said, is renting spending their money and getting nothing in return? And I know you guys could talk about that the rest of the hour, but I want to touch on that lightly.
Go ahead, John.
No, go, you take a stab at it first, and I'll make a comment.
Okay, sure. So I used to tell, I can't tell you how many hundreds of buyers that I've told that to. I can't even tell you. Sure. But what if you paid, you don't have the maintenance cost, you don't have all the costs that John's talking about, and what if you take that money and you invest it in the stock market where you get an average 8% return? At least that's what my retirement funds are calculated on, and my financial managers hit them. And what if you do that over time versus the net 0.3% that Chilla talks about, of the 48% over 124 years? I can assure you that if I had my investment funds invested for 124 years. I don't know what the multiples would be at 8%, but they would be somewhat huge. Even adjusted for inflation, if you assume inflation is 4%, it would still be a net 4% plus, which would be, what, 3 times 4, or 12 to 13 times higher than what the average house return is. So yes, the renter gets a handful of rent receipts, but they also get some benefits. They can get up and move anytime that they want to. Buying a house and then transferring a job 3 years later, John alluded to the transaction costs alone are a big loss because you pay on the front end and the back end. And you take all of those costs involved and then setting up in a new place, that can be very expensive really quickly. It's like buying a car almost. So those are the quick thoughts that come to mind about rent versus buy. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, so I just want to make one other point. So we're talking on an average basis, right? So of course, right, if you purchased your home in 2012, which was the bottom of the market, you're in good shape. You're likely going to have a really decent rate of return. But if you purchased in 2006, you're probably still upside down. So it depends on where you are in the real estate cycle, and this is a good segue into the section that Chris is going to talk about right here.
Yeah. So there is such a thing called the real estate cycle, and it loosely mirrors, I say loosely, mirrors the general economic cycle, but it is not exact, and it generally lasts longer. So we have a very good section explaining the real estate cycle, and not many people know about it. And if we adjusted our housing policy based on where we are in the real estate cycle, we'd have a much more sensible housing policy across the country. And frankly, realtors could advise and mortgage brokers could advise their clients better about when to buy, when's a good time to buy, and when's not such a good time to buy, or when's a good time to sell and when's not a good time to sell. And so John will talk about the peaks and valleys of that and how that occurs next in the next slide. So let me just click this one. There we are.
Okay, so here's a question for you, Scotty. I'm going to put you on the spot. Where do you think where do you think we are in the real estate cycle? Where's your market? Are you down in Florida?
Yes, I'm down in Florida. Yeah.
So where do you think we are in the real estate market here?
There is less. I would say we're at the expansion mode. A ton of people moving in. There is a ton for sale, but if it's priced right, it goes very quickly. Very few days on the market if it's priced right.
Yeah. So you're 100% correct. So this is what a typical real estate cycle looks like. It's never this smooth. The contraction and recession phase are usually much steeper than this graphic shows. But the time between going through the equilibrium point into expansion to the point of recovery going back through the equilibrium, or we can say from market peak to market trough, is usually somewhere between 10 and 18 years. So there's been a couple theorists that suggest that it operates more closely on an 18-year cycle, and coincidentally, the last peak was in the second or third quarter of 2006, and the prior one before that was in 1989. So it's just about that 18-year point. So we include a chapter in the book that discusses how you can determine where your market is in the real estate cycle, because there is no such thing as a national market, right? There's a national average consisting of all markets. So when you look at and when you hear the National Association of Realtors talk about how much appreciation happened last year, that's on a national average basis, and it's averaged through all price points. So in my market, we hear in Massachusetts that year over year we're up 6%. But at the lower price points, anything below 400,000 is probably up 8 or 10%, and anything over $1 million is probably only up 1 or 2%. So it's important when you look at and you're trying to figure out where you are in the cycle, and the chapter in the book really gives you a lot of things you can look at to determine that. You must remember that you need to break it down into your market, which is your area or your town, and you it has to be broken down by property type and price point.
I mean, really, going back to that last slide, really what it boils down to, if I'm hearing you, is no matter where you're at in the cycle, the more people you know, the more people that know, like, and trust you is going to determine your income. Because if you go, all right, I need this many people to do this many deals, or I need to connect, engage, and interact with this many people to do this many deals, no matter where you're at in the cycle, it's going to be harder on the recession part. It's going to be harder on the top of the climb because there's more competition, right? But the more people that know, like, and trust you, the deeper the relationship you have, the more recession-proof your business is. Would you agree?
Absolutely. And this is part of, this ties into product differentiation or being the expert, right? Yes. It's shocking to Chris and I. So we speak in front of Real Estate Investors Group, and we had the guy who is a huge real estate investor that was running this Real Estate Investors Group of 200 people, and he came up to us right after the presentation and told us that we were wrong about the real estate cycle. He thought we were at the peak. Now, this was 18 months ago. And here's a guy that's in the business that doesn't understand the real estate cycle. And I would suggest to him or anyone else, you read those 2 chapters in our book, and you're going to be an expert on the real estate cycle, and you're going to be able to differentiate yourself from others. It's amazing how few even real estate investors understand the cycle. And I think it's even a fewer number of real estate agents that understand it. So we think if you're truly going to represent your client, you should really have a pretty good, none of us have the crystal ball, all right? I'll start there. But real estate doesn't turn on a dime, right? So when you go from expansion to contraction, it doesn't happen in 1 month. You know, it's a slow period, and you can start to see days on market increasing. You can start to see certain things that are indicative of about where you are in the market. And if you're truly representing your clients, you should have a pretty good understanding of, you know, are we in expansion? Are we in contraction? Where are we?
Yep. You got to know that for sure. Yep. Cool.
So I'm just going to talk a couple other things about the market as a whole right now, the current state of the market. Now, this is on a national average basis. So I'm sure you're seeing it, Scotty, down in your area, down in Florida, and it's really happening more on the East Coast and the West Coast, and in the middle of the country. You don't have quite as much volatility, although there are certain markets that have it. Supply exceeds demand. I just read an article this morning that said this is the lowest level of inventory in 10 years. So when supply exceeds demand, when demand exceeds supply and new household formation exceeds new construction, the market, I think, at least in the near term, we're going to continue to see home price appreciation because there's an imbalance between supply and demand. And with Trump's policies now, whether you like him or love him or hate him, he's the guy that's in office, and he's setting a lot of the policies that will impact the real estate markets moving forward. So what we see in the stock market attests that people think the economy is going to do well moving forward. And with a growing economy, unemployment, underemployment, both of them will get stronger. And when the economy moves forward, it'll eventually lead to increases in wages. And usually when there are increases in wages, that gets capitalized into higher home prices. So I just figured we'd shoot out a couple thoughts of what we are seeing in the marketplace. I mean, it's happening here, and it's happening in many markets across the country.
Awesome. So what's this, a free coaching call? So if they put Agent Mastermind in the subject line, is this a group coach or one-on-one or what?
Yeah,
what is
no, it's a group coach. And so John and I are trying to figure out what we could come up with to give to participants for free that would have value and wouldn't be another checklist. And so what we decided to do is maybe if people go to our site, buy our book, take a screenshot of that, send it to us with Agent Mastermind in the subject line, what we'll do is we'll give a free group coaching session with both of us and have up to a full hour of just question and answer at the end. So if you have questions that concern you about real estate brokerage business, buyers or sellers, if you want to know about the foreclosure business, how to get into that, any of those things that you want to know about running your business more effectively, we'll have a seminar on that just available for your group, period.
Awesome.
And that's the offer that we're making.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that.
So, any questions you'd like to ask?
Let's see. So, great question by Ann. She says, I have read that if you own a home, and this is probably just a little bit of it. I have read that if you own a home, you only need to save half as much for retirement. I'm not sure if that's tying in like a reverse mortgage or what she really meant by that. But is there any way we can touch on that without knowing more?
Sure. I'll touch this one, John. So in our book, we talk about the problem with the net worth of some people. So I think I won't have the numbers exact, but I think the number that we have in the book is net worth of people who own a home is $179,000, and it's something like $64,000 without a home. Where those statistics are skewed is that it takes in all of the young people in those lower statistics, okay? So all those millennials who are just now buying houses, some of them in their 30s, all those people are excluded from like decades ago. Like when I bought my house, I bought my first house at 24.
Yeah.
The other thing is it's not counting. What's happening is what happens if you sell that home?
Right.
What happens if you sell that home? You could get a reverse annuity mortgage, but it's part of that. Remember, there are benefits to owning a home, and one of them is that you have an enforced savings program. So, and what you really need to do a financial calculation is adjust for inflation, and so you adjust out all of the costs, and maybe that same homeowner would have been better off investing the rest. But good for them, and I think it's great that people can get that kind of pop for if they hold on to it for 30 years and don't spend their equity. Go ahead.
So that's a great point, Chris, that you make. But there's one more point to be made there. So the statistics say that people that own homes have a higher net worth. So it's like almost 4 times or 3 times. So it's 50 or 60,000 if you don't own a home, and it's 150 to 200,000 if you do own a home. But what they don't analyze is it because of the home ownership that they have more money, or is it that the type of person that buys a home is spends less and saves more, right? So there's a distinction to be made there, and I just wanted to throw that little piece of info for food for thought. And Chris, why don't you go back one slide and just put our contact information up there, so anyone that wants to contact us can connect with us on social media and all the other sites. And then
hey, there's a question coming in by Yolanda. Great question here. It says, does the book cover information for clients that purchase homes as investment? Best practice for down payment for investment loans.
I'm not clear on the question. Can you ask that again?
Yeah, she says, does the book cover information for clients that purchase? So does the book cover where to get money for down payment for investment loans?
No.
They should talk to you.
Point.
Yeah.
Yolanda, I got you covered, baby. I got you.
Yeah. Excellent.
All right, cool. All right, yeah. So, I hear a lot of investors use hard money loans. Have you heard any or had any discussions about that?
Sure.
I know. In fact, I got a card in my pocket that the guy does almost across the country hard money loans for investment. Short term, you're going to pay a little bit more interest, but he provides the financing you need to buy the homes, fix them up, and then then refinance them into something more that you're either going to keep or flip. Yes,
and both Chris and I have done some of that ourselves. Have acted as the hard money lenders, and it's happening out there all the time. Every single real estate investors group meeting we go to, there's at least a half a dozen people that do that. But what people are realizing as soon as they start getting into the business of fixing and flipping homes and start to do any volume, they learn that they can find better sources of capital for less than the hard money pricing structure. So hard money in our area for fix and flips is usually about 14%, and it's usually 2 points on the front and 2 points on the back. But what people are learning is that they can find other sources of money, and once they've had a little success and they establish a relationship with someone that has money, they're often able to find it for about 10% and maybe only have to pay 1 point.
Got it. That's and again, it goes back to writing small cash checks to cash big checks, right?
Yep.
If you got whatever you got to pay, whatever you got to finance, whatever the rates are, depending on how much you're going to make, if I can spend 20 grand to make 50 or 100 or whatever, like what, or if I can spend 150 grand to make 300 grand or however, so that's really what you look at. So
one of my business mentors told me many years ago, he said, Chris, I don't care what rate I pay. I said, what do you mean? He said, I'll pay 80% interest rates as long as I can make 85 on the back end.
Exactly. Yes.
So it's just a tool. Money's just a tool. It's all cost benefit.
Absolutely.
It's all cost benefit.
Absolutely. All right, guys. You guys are amazing, and I'm just honored to be a part of your lives. So, love the book. Thanks for making me a part of it. It's just very special, and thanks for being on here today. I know you guys are doing some great things across the country, and just keep doing what you're doing and educating the masses out there of people that want to be successful in real estate. So I appreciate that. The name of the book is called Easy Money and the American Real Estate Ponzi Scheme. Great book, great cover, great name, very attractive. I love it. So great job, guys. Very well thought out and a ton of information in there. So appreciate you guys.
Hey, Scotty, thanks so much for letting us interview you, and we love the quotes that we put in the book, and thank you so much for the endorsement. We really appreciate you having us on.
You bet. All right, guys. Thanks for being here today. I appreciate everybody that's here. Same time, same place next week. If you haven't joined our private Facebook group, it's facebook.com/groups/agent mastermind. And everybody be safe. We'll see you on the web. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.